Good evening, brothers, and welcome to the Delta Chi International Chapter Call. I'm Jerod Breit, the Executive Director of Delta Chi, and tonight we'll take a look at 2020 and a peek into 2021 from all areas of the Fraternity and Educational Foundation. Of course, this would not be possible without hearing from our leaders. So I'm joined tonight by our AA, Aaron Otto, Kansas State 98, and Rod Arnold, Texas A&M 88, the chairman and president of the Educational Foundation. Throughout tonight, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see information about supporting Delta Chi by texting chapter call, all one word, to 91999, which will allow you to make a contribution to the Educational Foundation and support our leadership programming. We wouldn't be the same without all of our donors out there, and we want to thank you. And to those of you who are texting right now, thank you. 2020 was certainly a year like no other for our beloved Delta Chi. The global pandemic has reached every aspect, every corner, and every member in many different ways. And tonight, I want everyone watching to know that the heart of our brotherhood is with each of our Delta Chi families and friends as we continue to navigate COVID-19. Despite the pandemic, our progress as a fraternity staff advanced unabridged, and the accomplishments of our undergraduate brothers continued even though we've felt and still feel the impacts in membership, brotherhood, recruitment, and retention. In March of 2020, I challenged our brotherhood to imagine with confidence that the brotherhood cannot be defined or confined by the four corners of our campuses. And nearly every chapter accepted the challenge, and we should all be extremely proud of all of our undergraduates. Many, believe it or not, outperformed their philanthropy and recruitment goals virtually compared to fall of 2019. Just an amazing commitment that yielded outstanding results. Immediately following the onset of the pandemic in March, the fraternity staff was also challenged and rose above, developing, creating, and implementing more than 90 hours of virtual programming and education to provide engagement opportunities, from chapter and alumni opportunities to the impactful presentation of Breathe, Nolan, Breathe. Beginning in May, fraternity staff refocused to prepare in every way possible for the unknown semester that then lay ahead. Over the next 90 days, staff took more than 600 tasks and objectives in alumni mobilization and emergency fundraising, colony support, retention and recruitment, education and programming, membership strategies and organizational growth, media strategies, and services and operations. These areas drove the organization's strategic pandemic response with one overarching thing in mind: our undergraduate brothers. As August began, we were prepared to support our chapters and colonies in any environment, from in-person to fully virtual, and even no access to their campus, and everything in between. And so now we've adapted and updated every aspect of those fall resources and programs to address the still ever-changing environment we see this spring. Over the past 8 months alone, the website views, clicks, and average time spent on the resources has increased exponentially. This tells us that our brothers, our friends, potential new members, and interest groups are taking the intentional step to put resources into action and learn more about Delta Chi during a pandemic. In the summer of 2020, industry leaders said the fall semester would be the worst semester our industry has ever seen, predicting 25% reductions in membership, as well as chapters and even some universities closing as a result of the financial impact. For Delta Chi, just like Delta Chi's do, we took that as an opportunity, and you'll have a chance to hear a little more about that in just a few minutes. We're very fortunate to have such an amazing team of industry professionals on the Delta Chi staff. And in 2020, we welcomed Brother Carson Montano, Fullerton 20, to the chapter coaching and leadership consultant team. And for the first time in decades, Delta Chi shifted our insurance programs and partnered with Favor & Company, joining many other organizations in a self-sufficient, self-reliant series of policies that benefit Delta Chi, including the Master Property Program. Over the past 3 years and after the implementation of the 2017 Violation Reduction Strategy, today 96% of all chapters and colonies are in good standing. This means for a third year in a row, our chapters and colonies not only prevented incidents, but they also successfully completed and were released from corrective action without re-entering it. Additionally, we've expanded our prevention education to include important subjects like substance abuse and addiction, mental health awareness, and many more. That focus, combined with our programming and the actions of our brothers, allowed Delta Chi to be in a better position to engage our new partners, Favor and Company, to our long-term benefit. But now is not the time to lose focus. Together, I know that we can and will continue our prevention-based accountability programs, both locally and internationally, so we never find ourselves in the same place we were in 2017, and sleeping a little easier knowing our members are safer. Finally, the Delta Chi coaching program, led by an amazing group of talented professionals, continued to provide mentoring and support to 100% of our chapters and colonies for the entire academic year. And the results of this relationship-centered, operationally geared program shows across the board incremental improvement in each of our operational categories for Delta Chi. Look, are we happy 2020 is over? Yes. But more importantly, we're confident, cautiously optimistic, and I personally am excited to continue working through 2021 with 2 goals in mind: keeping everyone safe and advancing Delta Chi. But we can't do this without your help. No matter the amount of time you can give, your talents and experience are essential to the success of our chapters and colonies. If you have even 1 hour a week, virtually or in person, there is a need and a place for you. To the many brothers across North America and beyond who work tirelessly year-round as volunteers to advance Delta Chi, thank you. Especially a big thanks to the Board of Regents and the boards of the Educational Foundation and Barrister Capital Corporation. Our collective thanks goes out to each of you for your care and continued commitment to the advancement of Delta Chi. To the staff of the fraternity, the Educational Foundation, and Barrister Capital, thank you for your hard work and dedication in 2020, and I look forward to all you will accomplish this year. Now, we'll keep this rolling tonight, but don't forget that if you would like to donate and support Delta Chi's leadership programming, you can donate by texting Chapter Call to 91999. Now, I'm very honored to have the chairman and president of the Delta Chi Educational Foundation joining us live tonight, Brother Rod Arnold. Rod, good evening.
Jerod, how are you this evening? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the International Chapter meeting this evening. I wanted to report in as chairman of the Delta Chi Educational Foundation. Wow, 2021. Looking much better than 2020 already, if for no other reason than we get to change a number on the calendar. 2020, as Jerod had touched on earlier, posed unreal challenges to everyone involved. Here's what's happened on the not-for-profit side. At the beginning of 2020, everything was looking rosy until I believe it was around March when things started to come to a head. So imagine it being your job to go out and solicit and travel and raise funds for programming for your beloved fraternity. And all of a sudden you can't travel. All of a sudden everyone doesn't know what's going to go on with their own livelihood. All of a sudden donations and the interest in talking about donations goes out the window. So one of the things that we've really focused on at the foundation over the last couple of years is building our bench strength in regards to the experienced brothers that we have after they graduate and go out into the professional areas of endeavor, and have them on committees and on the board of directors and leverage those skill sets that they have that they're using in their professional careers. So here's where it paid off in 2020 for us. There are other fraternity foundations and other Greek foundations rather who had a very, very torturous 2020. And the reason for that is when the pandemic started, the sensibility was don't ask for money. Be sensitive. It's insensitive to ask for money right now. We have a professional fundraising committee, or a fundraising committee made up of fundraising professionals that are Delta Chi's, and we counseled with them and took their lead on what to do. And their instruction was, you know what? It's going to be difficult. It's going to be uncomfortable, but keep asking. And the reason for it is there are personalities who rise to the occasion, people who normally don't always donate to their chosen charities, but in time of need, they feel that this is where they can make the largest difference. So we listen to our committees, we listen to the professionals, and because of that, we ended up having a record year with the foundation, in a year where other foundations, not just Greek, but especially Greek, had really trying years. There are some Greek foundations who raised virtually no money this year, following the concept of not asking and not wanting to be what would be looked at as obtrusive at the beginning of the year. So what did it result in for the Delta Chi Educational Foundation? A record number of scholarships granted this year. We actually raised $1.2 million in 2020, and I'm looking at some notes over here. Almost 3,000 unique donor transactions, which is also up. So 3,000 unique donor transactions of varying sizes, with people stepping up saying, I want to help, for which we are most appreciative. Foundation assets have now grown to over $3.5 million. We have a 6-month fully funded operational reserve in place now, so that if something like 2020 ever happens again, we're in a very good fortified fiscal situation to be able to handle that. The areas that we've been focusing on moving forward have been, as far as strategy, grow our donor base. It's been our number one push. And for undergrads or recent grads, I'm sure that you're getting much more communication and joining the 1890 Society. Here's what happens with an organization about our size, and the established, I'll say established alumni that come to all the conventions and the RLCs. We talk about this often. We have this circle. And in this circle is all of the familiar faces, and we're all friends. We've all known each other for years. We come to all of our events. Just outside of that circle is a larger circle, and these are brothers who never went to an international convention, brothers who maybe never attended an RLC. They enjoyed the fraternity. They got some great things out of it, but they were not as directly engaged in day-to-day operations of the fraternity. And then you have this huge circle of people that came to school, they enjoyed it. Maybe they partied, enjoyed the social aspect, college is over, and they're done and it doesn't mean anything to them. So what we've been working on is growing that core base of donors, because that is what will allow us to grow in regards to operations, in regards to leadership funding for our undergraduate brothers. It makes everything bigger, and you start from the middle and you fortify and you build out from there. So that's been our focus for the last couple of years. So entering into 2020, I think we were in better shape than we would have been a number of years ago. We've got a lot of motivated people helping out on the foundation side. Alumni engagement is up dramatically. Moving into 2021, our focus is on growing that donor base. Some other stats that I've got: donor transactions up to almost 3,000 unique donors. We had 1,127 overall. Our annual Founders Day of Giving actually grew almost 5% this year. Thank you so much for that and your involvement in that. We also had people have asked for communication updates and something a little bit more up to date. So we're trying to look and appear more like the foundations and the not-for-profits that a prospective donor is also going to get attention from. That may be their local hospital. That may be other organizations of which they or their spouse are members. So we're trying to emulate, what grown-up foundations do, so to speak. I want to show you something for our undergraduate brothers. This is a copy of the former newsletter that the Educational Foundation sent out. We sent it out for a number of years. Nice little fold-over tab. Information on the inside. This is the updated Knight Errant, which has just been hitting mailboxes recently. There was a bit of a delay, obviously, with COVID and in the mail, but this is the latest Knight Errant that comes out. So your alumni will be seeing this very soon. It is a brochure. It is an update, a publication specifically for alumni to let them know what is going on in the Fraternity Foundation. This has got information on our annual meeting upcoming in June. But what we're trying to do is make this more of a coffee table publication, which is what they see from foundations, hospital foundations, other foundations that will lay around, and they'll see it and they'll come back to it. They'll read some of the articles in it. We're trying to talk about real brothers that are out in their professional field of endeavor, and draw those folks in. The folks that did not come to the international conventions maybe as an undergrad, but they're out there doing great things. We're trying to draw them back into the circle and show them that indeed there is a brotherhood of a lifetime going on here, and we have a place for them. And there's a number of ways that they can give. They can fund where it's needed most in unrestricted funds. They can fund scholarships for their chapters. They can fund ECHI, ECHI, Educational Chapter Housing Initiative funds for their chapters that are looking at expanding or growing or establishing housing. We can certainly help there. There's a number of ways, but the foundation exists as a donor vehicle. A donor wants to give to the chapter, to the fraternity, to leadership funding, however they wish to give. We want to find a way to help them donate to the fraternity in a tax-deductible way. Maybe as an undergrad, that doesn't ring with you. I promise you, after you graduate, you start getting a paycheck. Tax deductibility becomes huge. So we have multiple ways to help them in regards to estate planning and ways to give back to the fraternity in the long view. So with that, I will pass it back over to staff for any questions that come up. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you very much, Rod. Appreciate that. And I'm glad to see in the chat room that a lot of you are reconnecting and talking about snowfalls and whatnot in the East Coast. And glad to see, Jim, that you have no snow in North Carolina. That's a bad day if you have snow in North Carolina for the rest of us. My name is Otto, the AA of the Delta Chi Fraternity, and wanted to talk just a little bit tonight in reviewing kind of the last year and the year that was anything but typical, to say the least. And I guess I'll start out on an optimistic note that I think with the vaccine now starting to be distributed, now's the time for all of us to start sharing that, the benefits of being in a fraternity with our non-members and friends. And there's a few examples that some research that's been broadcast recently that are hard statistics that compare a fraternity man's experience to that of a non-affiliated student or an individual who may not have gone to college. And I'll give you three of those points here real fast. One of them is the fraternity and sorority members, they show a much greater overall level of involvement and engagement on their campus, in student organizations and in the classroom. That report shows that these folks are more likely, fraternity sorority alumni, to graduate from college because of that involvement in the classroom and outside the classroom on their campus. And today, more than 80% of college students deal with anxiety, self-admit, and 60% also deal with social isolation, loneliness, or depression. While at the same time, fraternity and sorority members report a much higher positive mental health condition than those and much lower levels of depression and anxiety. Fraternity and sorority members are also 10% more likely to have higher levels of engagement at the workplace than the national average. And workplace enjoyment and engagement is one of the largest drivers of quality of life, in the long term for an individual's experience. So I've said it many times, but if fraternity is done right, we're a powerful force for change in the lives of our members. And if we keep making significant impacts like those that you see in the statistics, I think you'll hear in the next couple moments about how last year, despite it being a COVID environment, we were making a positive impact in people's lives. So last year, the fraternity provided a number of resources to our undergraduates and to support recruitment efforts and our chapters and colonies recruitment. We had a goal of 810 new members. We exceeded that goal of 950 new associate members, which was about a 12% decrease over pre-pandemic fall recruitment numbers. But as you heard Jerod say earlier, this was looking into be one of the worst semesters in our industry's existence. So pretty pleased that was held to where it was. And almost all of those were done through virtual connections. I'm also happy to note that not a single chapter in our Brotherhood closed its doors because of COVID-19. That's a true example of resiliency and dedication, to say the least. Not only did we accomplish our goals, we also had 5 groups charter virtually in 2020. We now have a chapter at Denver, University of Denver, Virginia Tech, Chico, Omaha, and Texas A&M San Antonio. In addition, we're looking at starting a new colony. In fact, 2 colonies kind of got started in the fall virtually. One was at High Point University in North Carolina with over 40 founding fathers. It was a very soft launch. As far as I know, about the only alumnus that they've ever met was me, because I happened to be driving through the town and met with a few of them for dinner as they were getting started. But what a great new group we've got started at High Point. And we also started a soft rollout for University of Texas at Austin, reboot for this spring, with already some founding father members joining through social media and through social outreach. We also this fall had the chance to restart our Florida chapter. They were on a little bit of a timeout, and they've come back onto campus with 22 founding fathers and are set up ready to go for recruitment in the spring. We look forward also, one more thing about our growth, and what we look forward to is colony expansions. The fraternity's been very fortunate through our success with colonies to be invited to a number of campuses for our expansion in the future. And as I mentioned earlier, I think in 2021, you'll see an expansion at University of Texas, Austin, Loyola of New Orleans, Temple, and Quinnipiac universities, and others to be announced in the future. I'm going to talk a little bit about the successes of our new groups. Our new colonies are awesome, to say the least. It's an incredible combination of good recruitment, good staff work, and just quality members. Our colonies, on average, our size founding father class is 37 members. And when you compare that to the peers of on the same campuses of other colony efforts in that time period, their average is 31. Our average GPA of Delta Chi colonies is 3.33, compared to other colonies who are on the same campuses at a 3.11. Those numbers above are supported by a 4, 6, or 8 week AM program that was designed and really rebooted a couple years ago by the fraternity. And it's been one of the most amazing indicators that 90% of the members of chapters or colonies that use this, 90% of their AM stay involved through initiation. And I got to give a lot of credit. Our chapters and colonies are doing a lot of great things to continue the fraternity experience, just doing it different ways. They're doing it with ways that are complying with local health department rules and guidelines or campus limitations. I know one group that decided to find and do Craigslist shopping and put together their own gym when gyms in their city were closed in their state. And they have limited use of it in terms of number of people at a time, but they can still have the opportunity to have a workout environment. Another group bought shop equipment, and they do projects where it doesn't make sense for everybody to have a power drill, but it makes sense for 40 guys to have a power drill they could share. I just admire the creativity that's at play, trying to show different ways that you can build off of the experience in fraternity, even in a COVID environment. We had a number of awards. The pandemic didn't stop us from recognizing the great things our chapters did, to say the least. And I want to give a shout out to the chapters that won a President's Cup for the 2019-2020 academic year. In the red division, it was Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and Wisconsin. And in the buff division, it was Huntsville, Truman State, and Whitewater. I'll tell you, the awards packet for 2021 will be published soon. And I look forward to seeing a great increase in applications. Just like last year, we had a large increase despite the pandemic in applications. I hope the same will be the case this year, because the simple fact is you can't win if you don't apply. And we hope at the end of the semester to have a number of applications we can go through and recognize the achievements that all of our groups have been able to perform, even in a COVID world. Additionally, I want to mention that Delta Chi needs you. In this case, we need committee involvement. On the odd years, we appoint alumni and undergraduates to the law committee, publications, housing, ritual, community service, just to name a few. They meet online. We're getting all very good at virtual Zoom visits. And I hope that's something you'll consider giving a little bit more time and having experience beyond your own local chapter on the international level. To apply for those, that will come live here and is live, where you can put in an application at deltachi.org/international-committees. Another milestone in 2020 was anniversaries of chapters. Cal Poly turned 50, North Alabama turned 10, Whitewater 50, East Stroudsburg 10, Kennesaw 10. And in 2021, there's some major milestone anniversaries coming up. Central Missouri will turn 50, Gannon 50, Hamilton up in New York 10, University of the Sciences USP 10, Westchester 25, Wilmington 10, and Wisconsin will turn 100 years since we had our first presence in Madison of Delta Chi. Sadly, there was a little bit of bad news in 2020 and the disappointments, and we lost a few chapters over the last year. One of them was the Windsor chapter in Canada. It was closed by the fraternity with the support of its alumni after a large number of racist and very violent GroupMe chats, Facebook chats, Snapchat photos, and other videos surfaced on social media. We also lost the Purdue chapter after many years of challenging operations and significant efforts to reform the chapter in terms of risk management failed. There's also been an effort on a number of campuses, an effort called Abolish Greek Life Now. And this group has been working all over the United States and North America in particular. And there's been a dozen or more cases where the general fraternity has been in helping our chapters try to resist some of the comms and thoughts of these groups. And unfortunately, we did lose two chapters, American University in Washington, D.C. and Northwest University in the Chicago area, because of Abolish Greek Life Now. But we've been able to hold back on a number of other campuses in trying to explain the message and the value that Greeks and the fraternity system still provide today. Now, in all of these cases, if we remember our values of our fraternity, they've stood the test of time for the last 130 years plus. That'll continue to serve as a guide. It will help us avoid situations like some of those I just mentioned from happening in the future. I'd also mention that the fraternity was able to help defend a number of our chapters when they had threats of closure or suspension because due process wasn't followed or they weren't provided their constitutional rights. And I want to give a lot of credit to the fraternity staff for stepping in and trying to help a fair process in those situations. On a very positive note, the V Foundation, over the last 14 years, the Delta Chi has raised over $1.8 million for the V Foundation for Cancer Research, which includes nearly $700,000 since the summer of 2016. Even in a COVID environment, our chapters and colonies raised nearly $42,000 for the V Foundation through incredibly creative philanthropy efforts, such as online bingo raffles or the Kettering A chapter, where the chapter president, I think, kind of maybe said on a whim, he'd be willing to shave his head if they could raise a certain amount of money. And they surpassed that about tenfold. And that's when a few chapter officers joined them in shaving their beards or heads. They raised $5,500 from that activity alone. Another chapter that had great success this year was the Cal Poly chapter, raising just shy of $5,000. And Barrister Capital Corporation, they had a really excellent year in 2020 as well. They renovated and moved the Oshkosh, Wisconsin chapter into their own house purchased by Barrister Capital Corporation with a ribbon cutting this fall. They secured a much more favorable master lease for the Missouri State chapter in Springfield, which is their second property under the leadership of Barrister Capital Corporation. They secured a competitive house for the Chapel Hill colony through a lease right off of campus. They purchased, renovated, and moved in the Eastern Washington chapter into their own chapter house. And through the strong working relationships between Barrister Capital Corporation and chapter and colony leaders, I'm proud to say I've heard no reports of any properties that our members are living in that are BCC managed that were found out of compliance or did not violate the local school's COVID policies. Now, we're grateful for the statistic, and we want that statistic to continue with barrister policies and with the institutional support so that trend can continue through the end of COVID. And as always is the case in a year, we say hello and goodbye to a few members of our board. Max Harper and Shiraj Moiboya joined the board as representing the chapters in regions 4, 5, and 6, respectively. We also said goodbye to long-term board members, Nick Kern and Justin Donnelly, JD, who left their positions as regents. We're grateful that both Nick and JD will continue to be involved in the fraternity on the international level in providing leadership in new areas. And then our training efforts. We still had Delta Chi's A's Academy and other training opportunities like online for officer trainings and RLCs. They've all had to be reprogrammed and shifted to an online platform. It's amazing to hear already from the participants of the A's Academy that despite the lack of face-to-face interaction, they still found a lot of invaluable material covered during the online sessions and some of the breakout sessions that took place. And lastly, and it was kind of mentioned earlier, I really want to thank the volunteers that have given their time and treasure the fraternity in these unique and unusual times. I've heard such amazing stories of alumni advisors stepping up so much more than usual to help support the chapters when everyone's working on recreating how we deliver the fraternity experience. And another group that's been an exceptional amount of time in service of Delta Chi on the strategic level has been the Board of Regents, oftentimes meeting multiple times in 1 month. I want to thank you for attending our national chapter meeting tonight and look forward to getting back to a more normal life, hopefully in 2021. And I do want to thank you all for continuing to live out our values in your daily lives and work so that we can make Delta Chi the best fraternity in your campus. And I'm certainly excited to take any questions you have later for us. Thank you for letting me be here.
Aaron, thank you so much from the great state of Kansas. Appreciate you being here tonight. Well, we've come to the part in this evening's call for the Q&A. So we'll ask Rod Arnold to join us. And if Delta Chi's Director of Meetings and Events, Paul Bierman, wants to join us, we can answer a few questions that have come in. Paul?
Good evening, everyone. This first question is actually for you, Jerod. Housing and affordable housing continues to be of interest to members, especially on campuses where recruitment favors those with a house. What can an alumnus or an undergraduate do to start the process of obtaining a house?
Yeah, great question, and I'll open this up to Aaron and even Rod to chime in. I think the first thing to do is to reach out to headquarters or Barrister Capital directly. Barrister Capital has some amazing talent to give not only insight into your geographic location and real estate in the area, but but how to run a chapter house and what to look for, and really talk to you about the size of your chapter and what your goals are with recruitment, because you were right. There are plenty of campuses that recruitment does depend on what the living situation is, and a lot of that is because of affordable housing, as well as the environment to share with your brothers. So again, I think my very first recommendation would be to reach out to Barrister Capital, Jeff Broderick or Eric Stice directly. Just some amazing insight that they'll be able to help you with. And then the second thing is you'll have to start looking into forming a housing corporation. There are plenty of people within Delta Chi, other housing corporation members and presidents currently or over the years that would love to help provide some guidance and insight into what that task consists of. So I think the step number one is to reach out. And if you don't know where or who, the Delta Chi website can put you in touch with Barrister Capital and the headquarters as well. Aaron, Rod, anything to add to that?
I might just add for a moment that I think everything Jerod said was spot on. I think housing's because of its long-term nature of it, is a really strategic decision. And so working with people, setting up your own housing corporation or working with Barrister Capital Corporation, that's incredibly important to look at the long-term perspective of what's sustainable and maybe not what's new and shiny, because eventually the shine will wear off. And the nature of a house is, to whom gets much opportunity comes much responsibility. I'll put it that way. But Barrister's had a very good success record lately, and there's also the Delta Chi Housing Fund that can make loans if someone's looking to purchase a house through a housing corporation and is looking for that last few dollars to make the deal go. I see Ken Shepard on here tonight, and Ken could be a resource for you there, as well as another opportunity for trying to encourage house ownership.
I might also throw in, just because we've dealt with this over the years, to our undergraduate brethren. Brothers, please understand and understand that we were all at that point in our life as well. There's a big difference in wanting some extra money to add a party deck onto the back of the house versus building a multi-million dollar mansion. And the quickest way to think of that is if any of you have been in one of my educational sessions, think of yourself, instead of just a social club, as a franchise. We are a franchise of ideals that were established long ago, but each of you is given excellent tutelage, excellent manuals, or in this case, online information. We've got people, from if it was McDonald's, the corporate office can come down and help guide and direct you, but it's up to you and what you do with that information and how effectively you carry it out. And that is the leadership laboratory that is the fraternity. So keep that in mind, that whenever you're talking about adding housing, yes, it absolutely gives you an advantage in 99 out of 100 chapters, but you're talking about adding an absolute asset to your franchise. And I would say that a strong alumni board, a housing corporation attached to that alumni board, is going to be absolutely essential before you start going to alumni and hitting them up saying, hey, we want to build a new house, or we want to buy a house. Make sure and have that put together and have a goal setting session, because this is not as Brother Aaron just stated, this is not a short-term endeavor when you buy real estate property, and you need to have professionals involved in it to know exactly how to set it up and what's the most effective way to do it. Again, tax deductibility for donors, if you're looking at trying to encourage your chapter brethren to donate to that, needs to be a bigger plan. So make sure in turn and ask a lot of questions and ask the right people.
All right. I'll go ahead and move into the next question, which it looks like, based on our chat, is timely and relevant. And this question is actually for you, Otto. Can you go into a little bit more detail about why convention was postponed?
Absolutely. That's a good question, and we can talk a little bit about the next one as well. So it was interesting, as you all remember, last spring, we were set to have a grand opening of the headquarters in Indianapolis on around March 20th, is my memory. And that's kind of when the bottom seemed to fall out. It was also the kind of opportunity that we saw even a few months before that. Basically, registrations for the 2020 conventions kind of came to a halt. And despite a lot of work by the staff trying to get students and delegates registered, we saw a single-digit number in like 4 or 5 weeks, which is a real sign that in this case, we also started seeing some demands and requests for refunds even of people who had registered. So we realized that we had a challenge. A lot of hard work by staff and some alumni with the hotel chain. We were able to get a one-time rescheduling for a convention because it was very clear that we had safety concerns, we had financial concerns, and certainly logistic concerns of trying to do a convention in 2020 in St. Louis. And regardless if 5 people showed up or 300 people showed up or 500 people showed up, we would have been on the line to write a check for several $100,000 to the hotel if the time had stayed where it was in 2020. So they gave us a one-time opportunity for rescheduling. And they had a choice, a date in 2021 or a date in 2022. With everybody talking about how long it takes to make a vaccine, and we weren't sure the condition of chapters coming through COVID because of some of the estimates that we'd see 25% drops in campuses, both in enrollment but also in membership in our fraternity chapter groups. That's when we said we will only get one bite at this apple, and if we're going to write several $100,000 check, we want as many people to have an opportunity to be at convention as possible. So we went with the last weekend of July 2022 in St. Louis, still down by the Arch. And to me, convention has so many important factors. And I'll just tell you, I mean, this will be my 13th, lucky 13. But there's, there's 5 big things that for me that happen at convention. There's the ritual session, which is a past ritualist. I know Tom Horwitz is on here, I think can agree. That's a very special session. It sometimes gets really detailed, but it's a chance that we all get together and talk about our ritual. If there's any questions or improvements that need to be made or modifications. You have your general sessions is another, which you debate bylaw changes, maybe talk about the dues, talk about elections. But you also have, it's the road trip to get there. It's the experience of being in a new town. I think that's a big part of a convention experience, to say the least, when 4 of you or 5 of you pack into a car and drive to, in this case, St. Louis. I'd also mention it's the educational sessions, both big sessions, but also the one-on-one, or not one-on-one, but small group breakout sessions that might be personal development or professional networking. Those are just some of the things that I think really, and just, I guess, lastly, it's the networking that you get both during the sessions or after the sessions or after hours, just meeting your peers and realizing you're not in this alone. Everyone's going through a lot of the same things. Here's something that worked for us. Hey, I heard something from this guy. You should talk to him. So we're excited to be back in convention. A goal is that, after missing one and postponing it, that hopefully we'll have a large attendance and some rebounding groups. And frankly, we had just over 600 people in Denver in 2018, which is amazing because we only have 3 chapters in the entire Rocky Mountain time zone. And now we're in St. Louis, where we are much closer geographically to so many of our chapters in the Midwest and the South. I'm pretty bullish and excited about what the 2022 convention will look like.
I'll have to say I'm excited as well. To turn over to the foundation side of things, this next question is for you, Rod. Can you tell us more about the Ray Galbraith Leadership Fund, and also how chapters can start a chapter scholarship account or find out if they already have one?
Rod, I'll stop you for just a minute if you want to unmute.
That was just my practice run. This is the real one right here. I was something about spiders. I'm sorry, I digress. Yes, I'm happy to answer that question. So Raymond Galbraith for Undergraduate Brothers was our longtime executive director and esteemed brother, and some of our alumni got together and wanted to establish a leadership fund to honor him. So what we've done is people typically give to our brotherhood through the foundation for a handful of reasons. Number one, it's estate planning. Number two, they want to be able to give or donate to their chapter for housing purposes, for scholarship purposes, and then for leadership training, which we assist in funding for our staff. So what we did with the Ray Galbraith Leadership Fund, that's an all-encompassing umbrella to cover the number of programs from A's Academy to Emerging Leaders Academy to RLCs. Instead of coming back and doing individual asks for each of these programs, it's a way to capture that general feel of what someone is wishing to donate to. And a lot of times we'll have someone saying, I want to support education educational programming. So it's a catch-all umbrella under which we have a myriad of programs that we can then present to them. But it's really more of a marketing positioning situation. So people get confused if we come and ask them for 17 different line items under the Brotherhood heading. So we want to try to keep it very simple and get to the core of why a donor is looking at supporting the Brotherhood, and then have that option for them. So within the long-term leadership fund, there's going to be two components of that as well, as we're also doing on the operational side of the foundation. Short-term immediate needs, and then long-term planning for the future. And as my esteemed brother Aaron Otto had shared with me some time ago, the best time to start a savings account is 20 years ago. And we've been working diligently in doing that as well for the long-term planning of the foundation of the Brotherhood, because there are other organizations out there that we have currently or traditionally thought of as more compact, smaller than our organization, and they have been building their war chest for a number of years. And you can look down the road and see where they will have expanded programming, expanded leadership training to reach more undergraduate brothers, and it will affect their growth. It will affect their membership growth without a doubt, and what they're able to give back to their undergraduates and carry that skill set out into the world and increase that sphere of influence. So that's what we're working on doing as well. Under the Galbraith Fund, there will also be a savings account, and also obviously most of it is going to be immediate need, but again, it allows people to give to the areas which they deem appropriate, which they feel they want to give toward. You had a question about a chapter scholarship account. So a chapter scholarship account is exactly what it sounds like. Each chapter has the ability to set up an account with a minimum of $10,000. So we don't have what I would call minor bank accounts where someone puts 500 in and they turn around and take it out. There's transaction fees just as your local bank allows you a certain number of deposits and withdrawals every month. If it's a small account versus a larger account, we want alumni to get together and establish a legitimate account that will be there for the chapter, but out of that can be granted scholarships. And again, last year we've seen tremendous growth in the chapter scholarship accounts, and we had a record number of scholarships this past year. So it's one of our premier programs. It's very popular in regards to a tool that alumni can give directly to their chapter and support scholarships. The best way to find out if you have one, quite a number of our chapters have one, is to reach out to foundation staff. Peter Lane or Jason Sisk either should be able to look up very rapidly and see if you have one. And if you don't have one, they can instruct you on how to approach your alumni on establishing one. And we'd be happy to help with that. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Rod. This next question is for you, Jerod. What things can we do as alumni if our chapter has been closed to stay involved and help ensure the chapter returns?
Yeah, great question. So first and foremost, I think 2 years ago, when I became the executive director, I made a commitment not just to the staff and the leadership of Delta Chi, but to all our alumni, that every year we'll return to at least one previously closed chapter. And to date, that commitment stays strong. And looking ahead at the 5-year plan, that is surprisingly but amazingly coming together, even during a pandemic. Those returns are slating, especially the ones where we have return agreements. So I'm really excited to continue that commitment that I made 2 years ago, because I think that I think we all feel the connection to our local chapter and the fraternity as a whole. So that's one. I think two, staying involved is extremely important, and we have many ways to stay involved, from committees to serving as an advisor, whether it be on an ABT, a housing corporation, or as a BB, but also just working with our chapters, even in a virtual format, in career and networking. And if you haven't signed up for the Firsthand Mentoring Network, I would certainly direct you to the Delta Chi website. I just spoke, I think it was last week now, with a brother who had his first mentoring session with an undergraduate. So it works, the connection is there. So there are many ways to stay involved. As it pertains to your chapter that may have been closed, I certainly stay true to my commitment to return to as many as possible, and that looks bright moving forward as well.
What role can the going back to you, Rod, we have a question here about what role can the Educational Foundation play in building or buying a chapter house? What do chapters need to know, and how can they get more information?
So again, I will say first and hopefully last as well to remind, make sure and go to our staff. Peter Lane and Jason Sisk can answer that question, but it's a good idea to know what an ECHI account is, Educational Chapter Housing Initiative. So did you know that a certain percentage, a square footage of your home, your existing fraternity residence, or a new under design fraternity residence can be counted as tax deductible educational space? That's right, gentlemen. So whenever you are drawing up a new house and you're having an architect lay out plans for that, the square footage that is attributed to libraries, to study carrels, to study halls, areas that are flex spaces that are used for meetings and such, can be basically written off as the educational portion of the home. So what this allows your alumni donors to do is they can donate into a Educational Chapter Housing Initiative account, and those dollars in that account can go towards the percentage of your house that is educational. So let's do a hypothetical. This is purely hypothetical. Let's pretend that your chapter alumni put together $50,000 into an Educational Chapter Housing Initiative account. When you are drawing up your house or redesigning it, you're able to get it appraised certain areas that are certain square footage that is educational in nature. The dollars can be used towards funding that percentage of the house. So if you have, again, an extremely large house in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, there's going to be a percentage of that house that can be written off as educational space. The dollars in an Educational Chapter Housing Initiative can be given tax deductible into that account, and they can be written out of that account to cover the percentage of payments for the square footage of that house. So Educational Chapter Housing Initiative accounts are very important if you are looking at trying to save money, collect donations, tax deductible donations from your alumni. And again, you can check with our staff to see if your chapter has one. I'm sure you would know if you had one, if you're involved in housing and extensive housing and fundraising for that, but it's a very good vehicle for that.
Time here for, thank you for that, Rod. I think I have time here for one last question. Any questions we didn't have a chance to answer tonight, we will be collecting and reaching out to you with an answer in the near future. So for you, Jerod, due to the ongoing pandemic and the impacts of campus restrictions and class formats, what can we do as alumni to help our chapters and support the fraternity during this difficult time?
Yeah, great question. The need is there. So I think that's the first thing that I want everyone to hear, is that the need is there. And it's not just with your chapter that you were initiated in. The need is there all over North America for qualified, talented mentors and advisors to play a role. Again, whether it's financial planning, to time management, talking about risk reduction or insurance, education and academic improvement. So I would first say, to support the chapter and the fraternity, they're really hand in hand, and the entire fraternity staff would encourage you that the way to stay involved and to lend a hand is to find a chapter, whether it be nearest to you or the chapter that has the biggest need, meaning that their alumni involvement has lowered over the years and playing a role in continuing to guide and help that chapter or colony. I think that's the most important part. And again, I said it the end of my remarks is there is a need and there is a place for you. So if you've, I talked to someone who was an AB team member when Larry Otto was the executive director of Delta Chi, and we spent 2 hours on the phone as I was traveling for Christmas, and looking for ways for him to re-engage and get involved. All these years later, I think that is just a testament to the endurance of Delta Chi's commitment to itself and its chapters. The one thing I hear a lot of is, who do I talk to, or who can I ask if I can be involved in a chapter, or if staff or someone else could tell me there's a chapter that needs help. And I would say, the first method would be on the Delta Chi website are staff's office hours. And the office hours are all of us that are in our offices with Zoom on. Anyone can join those Zooms. And I've had them where there's 4 or 5 people waiting to talk, and that's amazing. We're transparent and open. We're available, and I think just to have those conversations about where can I help and who needs the most help, I think is the most important, especially now during the pandemic. To your question, things are tough, and the support for our chapters is extremely important to the undergraduates. But we also have to remember that alumni have day jobs and work and have families. And so really, again, it goes back to that. Even if you have an hour a week to have a conversation, there's an undergraduate out there who's waiting for someone to talk to and to guide them and help them. So I would just say reach out, join one of our office hours. All of the director staff and myself, we're available. Our cell phones are on the website. You can text us anytime as well, and we'll facilitate that communication. But it's extremely important. But it's a great, important question. Thanks for asking it. Thank you, Paul. I know tonight we've gotten to that point a little over time, so thank you for being patient. Unfortunately, we've come to the time tonight where we have to end the Q&A, but we definitely want to thank everyone for joining us for the International Chapter Meeting. Don't forget that the International Headquarters Educational Foundation and volunteers with expertise or talents that want to get involved, please reach out between the foundation, the fraternity, Barrister Capital, and our chapters and colonies. There's always a place for you to be involved, either as an undergraduate or as an alumnus. And I'll just, Aaron, Rod, any last words?
I had one just out of the chat that I had not thought about, but Brother Mark Sluss had mentioned and asked to make sure and mention he had approached, this is for our alumni brothers, I think, more so than our undergraduate, but he had approached his company about matching donations. A lot of companies will do matching gifts, and the Delta Chi Educational Foundation, again, as a donor vehicle, is a separate legal entity, as an educational foundation, qualifies for that. So if you are working for a large company that does matching gift programs, make sure to ask about an educational foundation in that. It does qualify, and it's a great way to help drive additional dollars into the programming for our Brotherhood. And thank you, Mark, for that comment and for your efforts to do that at your own company. Thank you.
And thank you very much for letting us be with you tonight and for joining us. We appreciate it and appreciate all you do for Delta Chi all year round.
That's great. Again, to all those who wrote questions that we couldn't get to tonight, I see one in there from Mr. Doug Galbraith. We'll get you some answers to that and some information to help you out. But all in all, what an amazing event tonight. Rod, Aaron, thank you for your time. Paul and Ben Ely, who's producing the event. Thank you all, and to our alumni, thanks for joining us. Please share this so those who couldn't make it tonight have the ability to hear more about Delta Chi. Lastly, stay safe and stay healthy. Good night.
Good night.